This episode of the Grand Rising Show was brought to you by Autochthonous Assembly, where the real work is done. Autochthonous Assembly is a gathering of the minds that do the work. Now, for many of our first-time subscribers and first-time visitors, you may be wondering who Autochthonous Assembly are. You can find this information about our mission statement and our core values on the website at autochthonousassembly.com/about. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous American voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, or your family tree, which is the study of families and the tracing of their lineages and history. Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its members. Our core values are the foundation of our company, which is essential to our success and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. Those core values are, but are not limited to, integrity, which is knowing and doing what is right; respect, which is treating others the way you want to be treated; responsibility, which is embracing opportunities to contribute; and servant leadership, which is serving the common good. Now, at Autochthonous Assembly, we have a couple of goals here. And our first goal and foremost of the reason why we do what we do is to ensure that we help you do your genealogy and connect back to your tribe and find out where you are from. Everything that we do from the standpoint of the Grand Rising Show and all the information that's posted on the website is dedicated to that one specific purpose, helping you find your genealogy, find your relatives, find your family so that you will know exactly who you are. And if you choose to, tie back into your tribe, whether that tribe is a Native American tribe, an American Indian tribe, whether it's allowing you to determine which house in Africa that you belong to, or what clan of Scandinavia or Europe or France that you belong to. Either way, our goal is to do just that, help you find out who you are so you know exactly where to start. We are not here to tell you who you are, and we're not here to tell you who you are not. We're just here to help you discover your beginnings. Another one of our missions is to help you become financially independent so that you can help your generations for the next 7 generations and be able to put a stable foundation for you and your relatives. And if you should choose to use this information that we provide free of charge to help not only yourself, but your community and your tribe, then we will do everything in our power to make sure that gets done as well. And remember, our goal here is to make sure that we help you get exposed to this information to put you in the best situation possible. So now what I'm going to do now is return it back over to the panel to see if there was anything I missed, and I will go ahead and get set up so we can get ready and get digging into this information. Panel, take it away.
Warning, warning, warning. Hard hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots required.
See, Grand Rising, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. This rising, really, this.
You knew he was in the button and everything. I was on purpose.
Hey, y'all started it. This rising. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Actually, it was TMA.
Mm-hmm. I did not.
Us into thinking we was live when we weren't. So.
Are you serious
right now? Come in with my well-practiced introduction for the relatives, talking to myself.
Mm-hmm. Talking to nobody, talking to me.
You was talking.
I need to hear it.
Why me? Why?
Grand rising, everyone. Hope all the relatives have a very blissful and enjoyable weekend.
Where have I heard that before? Oh, you just said that 5 minutes ago when TMA said we was live, but we wasn't.
You finished? You done?
Oh, no. I'm American. Oh. Finished.
You do realize the day is Monday, right? Just
for Monday.
It's my Friday. Thank you very much, sir.
It's Friday.
Okay.
Well, you had to sigh through your nose like that, though.
Why I got to? What?
That was some harsh nose breath.
That was not a nose breath. That was a sigh.
Okay.
There's a difference. Oh my God.
Like it was trajectoried through some.
I hope everybody was able to catch the programs over the weekend. Hope it was helpful and showing people why genealogy is very important and why you definitely cannot use your eyes to try to judge who somebody is.
Yeah.
It's gonna make you look stupid in the end.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, if you want to judge family like that, then I don't know. It's kind of, or your relatives, that'd be, I don't know. Yeah, watch who you don't like. Might be the blood.
Okay. Yeah. Grand Rising, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Hopefully, you had a great weekend.
Oh man.
We know Bones is definitely not a backup singer in the entertainment world.
Maybe trying to leave him alone.
He got a lot of talents.
Look, stop.
That's all I'm gonna say about that. Oh man, I want to say Grand Rising. Let's send a shout out to the new subscribers. I understand that you could subscribe to any channel that you see fit and that you could spend your rising with anywhere or anybody. We appreciate you subscribing and coming on with us. I want to say Grand Rising and peace to the Autochthonous Assembly, silent majority, those individuals that make up the numbers that are listening every rising. But, just hanging in the cut, chilling, using the information that's going to benefit them and their relatives, their tribes, their clans, whoever, their community. And, we hear from you through the emails, and sometimes you come on to the chat. So we definitely appreciate you. Want to say Grand Rising and peace to the best chat on Earth with the F or PH, whatever your preference. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get this roll call right quick so we can talk a little bit about Friday, the weekend, and then hit this clock and get to getting. So Grand Rising Copper Color Ancestor, Grand Rising Celestial Love, Grand Rising Copper Chopper 803, Grand Rising to David Corey, Grand Rising to Oak Cliff, Grand Rising to the Ohio Player. Let me see what else. Y'all miss nobody. Grand Rising Cab, Grand Rising Padded Bus. So we got a padded bus on a cab this rising. That's awesome.
See who we be attracting. Padded bus.
Grand Rising Dude Vision.
Really sound like a paddy wagon.
No. We're not doing that right now. Grand Rising J Susquehanna. Grand Rising Copper Indio. I can't with y'all. Grand Rising Joe 47.
Yeah, Joe 47, HTTR. It's a new day.
All right.
Got a new name out there. Grand Rising to Internet Sucks. Peace. Glad
Grand
you joined
Rising,
us.
Internet Sucks.
What's going on? Internet sucks.
So we have an Internet Sucks and we have a padded bus. Wow. Okay, that's what's up. Talk about getting.
Hey now.
So is a bus padded because the Internet sucks or what?
Yeah, make it go crazy. I understand. I totally get it. See,
But anyway, welcome. We
Make the
definitely
grid
appreciate you
separate.
for coming on. There you go.
what? Just saying.
So Doodle Vision says padded bus and safety helmets. That's right. We all about safety around here. Grand Rising Trab.
Peace, Trap. How that South Florida weather is just rising.
So, man, that was a lot of stuff that went on this past weekend. A lot of stuff that went on Friday. Let's see, where do we start? Well, basically, a quick recap of Friday. James Flames basically broke down the Baleen, basically broke down the languages and how big words are made up of small words and how the language goes back to the Mayan culture and how it can be easily traced. And when it comes to linguistics, Grand Rising Mike Easton, you can pretty much find everything you need to know about who we are and where we're from because the information is in our names. I also wanted to give a shout out to Stephen Redcliffe for coming on and telling their origin story. And it made me think about what's been going on, especially with the tribes and things, because what we had to realize and what we have to realize and continue to let people understand is that depending on what direction you're coming from, the origin stories may not be the same. Case in point, the Catawba Sapani in Ohio, their origin story is tied up with the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois. Well, we know the Haudenosaunee come from the north, by way of what was, Nova Scotia, then New France. So their story goes, they came down from New France, then into Ohio, then they came down into Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, okay, went back up to Virginia at Fort Christiana, all right, and then they went back up. Grand Rising Lady J, that's their origin story. Our origin story, the Catawba Sapani, we are the Isa from the Itza, from Chichen Itza, from Maya culture. They hail from South America and were pushed north and stayed northeast and went as far as Virginia, where they met with the Haudenosaunee at Fort Christiana. There was a split, and then some of the Isa went with them, and they became Sioux. So depending on where your origins lies will determine what your origin story is. And as we start to look at each other's cultures and we start to look at the tribes and where their origin story lies, we will find out exactly where they come from. So definitely we appreciate the Sapani Catawba of Ohio for sharing their origin story with us, and we understand now exactly, or we have a better understanding where the split occurred and where, for lack of a better term, the division is. So we hail from the Mayans, they come from the Iroquois. Keep this plain and simple. So at the end of the day, as we continue to do our research, we'll find there are a lot of tribes that started like that. So it's interesting. Definitely interesting. Grand Rising LJ Free. Hope you're doing well. Grand Rising Big Chief. I want to thank everyone for catching the cab with us this rising. Does anybody want to have anything? Got anything to say about that? About the the Northern Sioux and the
No,
Southern.
this, this mainly, it goes back to what we say, why genealogy is important. Because you nailed it on the head, depending on what direction a lot of these tribes went when they split and who they got absorbed with, a lot of the stories will change. You know, because over time, because of the wars, the taking of Indian land, some tribes had to join up with other tribes taking on new names. A lot of times stories stuff get added to it. So yeah, it's important for each individual to do their own history and to know who you are. Know your truth, not someone else's, your truth.
So what's up? So before we get on with the German colonizers in Ethiopia, now known as the continent of Africa, you want to tell us a little bit about the videos that you released over this weekend and give us some insight on what was your thought process and why you just want to give people a concussion on a weekend and not let them enjoy it? That's okay. I'm sorry. I'm bad. Go ahead. I'm gonna go on Murray.
Yeah, basically the first one I did was what was passing, to show people that using the eye test and falling into these categories of calling people black or white is very dangerous, because we come in all different shades, from the lightest of light to the darkest of dark. And it shows in history that there were people that you would consider Negroes that were light enough to pass for white. Celebrities, stars, singers, over and over and over. So by judging somebody by what you think they look like, that doesn't mean that's who they are. And secondly, Sunday's video asked the question, what is black or what is white? When it shows that the misnomer that, oh, you can't have a child that look like this or I can't have a child that look like that. Yes, you can. We have to stop letting people tell us misinformation, because you have to ask yourself, who told you that melanated people can't have a so-called child that you would consider white? Who told you that so-called white people won't have children that you would consider black? Who told you this? Because if you study the research and you look through history, this has always been happening. It's always been like this. You can have from the lightest of light to the darkest of dark. You have to realize this whole racial construct was created for a reason. What's the reason for it? To keep separation, to create a class system, to try to push people to the bottom of the bottom. Because I'm going to say it again. The most important thing that you need to have a winner is what? A loser. So if you're going to consider yourself a winner, you have to create a losing class.
You're going to have the rich. You got
and if we say that we're here not to be right, but to get it right, then by all means, we must get it right. Personal feelings doesn't matter, because we're here to get it right. Personal preferences shouldn't matter, because we're here to get it right. You don't know who's your family, who's related to you, until you do genealogy. And you don't know who you're going to find on your tree. You go back and you find somebody that happens to be a German on your family tree back in the 16, 17, 1800s. That doesn't change who you are. So again, it's very important not to let people tell you these things without seeing where the information comes from. And you should always ask yourself, why? And like I said, I'm going to try to get everybody to look at it how it needs to be looked at. Let's start having the conversations that for years that people run from, people dodge, people hide.
Oh, Lord. Dude Visions at it again. Thanks, Dude, for that. He said, because I'm a winner, no, not a loser, to be an MC is what I choose. That's the broad base. Anyway. One thing you said that was pointed to me, Bones, is that, you look in your family tree, you might not know who you're going to find. Well, I found in the mid-1800s, Scandinavian in my family. So, I ain't had to get back to the 1700s. But that goes back to your point. So, you'd have told me that, 4 years ago, I looked at you like you lost your mind. That's why doing your genealogy is important. So, with that said, it's definitely time to hit that clock. Where's my clock at? Where's the clock? Gotta find it. Give me a second. So everybody with a ratchet, go ahead and start handing out them helmets, shin guards. Somebody get the front end loader.
That equipped, man.
That equipped meant. That's what we doing. Okay. So, all right, punching the clock.
You hit back.
All right. Grand Rising Swarth Vader. So today we're going to be talking about...
The swarthiness is in the building. The swarthiness is in the building.
Exactly. So I'm going to put the link in the chat. Talking about the German colonial empire.
Uh-oh.
Did you say uh-oh?
Mm-hmm. It's about to get ugly.
No, it's not. Okay, maybe a little bit. I'm just saying, maybe just a skosh. Just a skosh.
That's a fake mustache. No, it's not.
Really? This is what we doing?
Yeah, you can. You can, yeah, you can.
So you want to read or you want me to read?
Huh? I'll start. I can start it off.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Where we at?
Really? Did you say?
No, I had to. Got the wrong screen up. You post the link?
Yes.
My bad, yo. Grand Rising, everybody. Peace to the chat. German colonial empire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one. All right. So, the German colonial empire constituted the overseas colonies, dependencies, and territories of Imperial Germany. Unified in the early 1870s, the chancellor of this time period was Otto von Bismarck. Key. Short-lived attempts of colonization by individual German states had occurred in preceding centuries, but crucial colonial efforts only began in 1884 with the Scramble for Africa. Claiming much of the leftover uncolonized areas in the Scramble for Africa, Germany managed to build the third largest colonial empire at the time after the British and French.
Stop. Huh?
That's something to think about. The third largest?
Let me read that again. What is that? Let's see. Claiming much of the leftover uncolonized areas in the Scramble for Africa, Germany managed to build the third largest colonial empire at the time after the British and the French. Timeline.
So then it talks about the Scramble for Africa. Does anybody know what that means?
I ain't never heard it. They got a lot of yard birds scrambling eggs. I don't know.
Let me go ahead and click
A
on
word game with African letters? I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's
what let me stop.
It's like words with friends. It's a Zynga.
No, it's not.
No, but basically, this is at the time that you have colonization in Africa, people running over there, setting up shop in particular areas, mainly like the West Coast, you know, the French, the Germans, Dutch. different houses of the Roman Empire.
Can we be heard? Mic check. Can we get a mic check going around?
Yeah. Can anybody hear us?
Mic check, 1 2 1 2. Everybody can hear clearly out there.
2 2 2.
Yeah, they can hear us.
All right.
Let's make it show. No, I think because
David Corey put mad twos in there.
The African scrambled eggs.
Man, y'all play too much.
Grand Rising Ibrahim. Anyway, so the Scramble for Africa talks about, it's also called the partition of Africa and the conquest of Africa. And we also have to remember, in the 1800s, this continent still wasn't called Africa. It was still called Ethiopia. It didn't become Africa until the 20th century.
Yeah,
remember, because when the Ottoman Empire actually took over, those 2 states out of the 54 states in the northern part of Africa, Algiers and Tangier, call them one North Africa and the other South Africa. The rest of the continent was called either Libya, Kofar, or Ethiopia. So please keep that in mind. It did not become Africa as a continent until the 1900s. So now that we didn't get that out the way, which we'll probably have to keep correcting as we continue to read this. It says there was an invasion, and so I'm going to read from it. It says occupation, division, and colonization of African territory by European powers during the period known as historians as the New Imperialism between 1881 and 1914. So basically, they didn't start colonizing until the late 1800s. Now think about this: 1881. What was going on in the Americas in 1881? In the 1800s. In the 1800s.
Getting ready for Reconstruction.
What else was going on?
I know early 1800s.
Between 1820 and 1890, what was going on?
Indian removal.
Oh, Indian removals, frontiers, confiscation acts, civil wars.
What else? There was a major migration of over 15 million people coming from where? Going where?
From Germany
From
to
Ireland,
Americas.
Germany to the Americas. 15 million.
You had the Irish coming to the Americas, but basically a major migration of Europeans coming to North and South America.
Okay.
This is all at the same time, not like one after the other.
No, this is going on
They were Irish,
simultaneously.
they were Germans, man, at the same time. Oh, my bad.
In 1870, only 10% of Africa was under formal European control. Wait a minute. Did y'all see that? In 1870, only 10% of Africa was under formal European control. What 10% was that? Anybody know?
Exactly, because the colonization of Africa is going on now. That's why they're trying to send people over there to Ghana. Better wake up, smell the roses, our coffee.
So wait a minute, 10% of the continent by 1870 was under European control. So that means that was 90% of that continent that was not under European control. So where are all these Africans coming from? They're supposed to be over here in America.
Oh, we was looking for Africa?
Well, it says only 10% of the Africa was under formal European control. Now, are they saying, Grand Rising, Carrie Bay, are they saying Africa as a continent that we know at this particular time was called either Ethiopia, Kofri, or Libya? Or are they talking about Algiers and Tangier, which the Ottoman Empire had ruled for over a couple of centuries? Because that's what the question needs to be asked. So which Africa are they talking about? Because they said only 10% of Africa was under formal European control. And if that's the case, which 10%? And then, too, where did all these Africans come from since 10% of the continent was only under European control? I'll wait.
But if you look at languages, TMH, come to find out these African languages are German, Swahili and all this. So look at where they at.
Something to think about, huh?
Bantu, African, Swahili. What it says, that's East. That's the language of the East African colonies. Huguenots.
And you know it's funny because they got Belgium separate from Germany. Where's Belgium?
Germany.
I thought it was in waffles.
Oh boy, gotta love this. So, by 1940, it had increased to almost 90% of the continent, and only Ethiopia, Abyssinia, and Dervish State, a portion of present-day Somalia, and Liberia still being independent. There were multiple motivations for European colonizers, including desire for valuable resources available throughout the continent, the quest for national prestige, tensions between pairs of European powers, religious missionary zeal, and internal African native politics. Again, the continent was not called Africa at this time. The continent was called Ethiopia. The Berlin Conference of 1884, which regulated European colonialization and trade in Ethiopia, is usually referred to as the ultimate point of the scramble for Ethiopia, consequent to the political and economic rivalries among the European empires in the last quarter of the 19th century. The partitioning or splitting up of Africa, aka Ethiopia, was how the Europeans avoided warring amongst themselves over the continent of Ethiopia. The later years of the 19th century saw the transition from informal imperialism by military influence and economic dominance to direct rule, bringing about colonial imperialism. So instead of them warring like they would normally do, they decided to just split it up like a pizza pie or a piece of cake.
But now, if these people are just getting over there now and setting up shops and stuff in the 1800s, how was you bringing people from there supposedly to here in the 1600s? I'll wait.
Well, when we started looking at history from their perspective, they never said anything about taking people from Africa to the Americas. That's only coming from the American standpoint.
Yep.
Because if you go into the European archives, aka the Iberian archives, aka the Spanish archives, or you go into the Dutch and German archives, or you go into the French archives, you won't find them sending any Africans to the Americas, or what we know as Africans. But, you know, so either the United States is lying or all those countries are lying. I don't know. You tell me.
And even got thousands of shipping records and Continental Assembly form, and not one of them came from Africa. They came from Germany, Ireland, all these other European places, but not the land they call Africa. Well, not to mention, yes, you did have the Huguenots come on ships from all Southwest Africa.
Yeah, Mike Easton says, yeah, King Leopold was the king of Belgium, and they're pretty much Germans. Yeah, they are Germans. They're cousins, brothers, in a sense. So let's look at the background. It says by 1840, European powers had established small trading posts along the coast, but they seldom moved inland, preferring to stay near the sea and mainly just used the continent for trade. The middle decades of the 19th century, European explorers had mapped across the East African and Central Africa. Hold up. Did y'all not hear that?
So how are you grabbing people if they're just getting here in 1840? Wrong.
It says, by 1840, European powers had established small trading posts along the coast, but they seldom. Does anybody know what seldom means? Do we have to look up seldom?
Very rarely, sparsely.
Yeah. They very seldom move inland, preferring to stay near the sea and mainly just use the continent for trade. In the middle decades of the 19th century, European explorers had to map areas of East Africa and Central Africa. So, by the 1840s, now remember that this is a time frame where slavery from Africa is outlawed. You couldn't bring in slaves from Africa no more. So by this time, they're saying by this time, there had already been trading posts established. and they had seldom moved inland. They didn't say seldom move inward after slavery was made illegal, or seldom move inland after they had captured millions of slaves. Read from understanding, you can keep that comprehension crap.
Yep.
Then it goes on to say, even as late as 1870s, Western European states controlled only 10% of the African continent, with all their territories located near the coast. Most important holdings were Angola and Mozambique, held by Portugal, which we know is the leftmost part of the coast of Iberian Peninsula. The Cape Colony, held by the United Kingdom, and Algeria, held by France. By 1914, only Ethiopia and Liberia remained independent of European control. Technical advances facilitated European expansion overseas. Industrialization brought about rapid advancements in transportation and communication, especially in the forms of steamships, railways, and telegraphs. Medical advances also played an important role, especially medicines for tropical diseases. The development of quinine and effective treatment for malaria made vast expenses of the tropics more accessible. Expanses of the tropics more accessible to Europeans. Go ahead.
And I'm glad you mentioned the malaria thing, because that's what stopped a lot of these colonizers from moving inland. And I always question, how are you taking people from the inland of this continent when they couldn't get past malaria? The reason why the old black and white Tarzans showing you that they swinging in the swampland is because they couldn't get past the coast. The interior Africa don't look like no swamp. It's plains. That's only on the coast it look like them old African movies and television shows. That's all they ever knew about the continent.
Yep.
David Corey crazy. Okay. So where are we at?
Leave it at that.
That's all. I mean, if you listening, then you can watch it later. But I'm not reading it.
I feel you.
I just created a cliffhanger around at 8:47 a.m. mark.
That first paragraph in causes is very interesting before we move on.
The first paragraph where? Oh, in causes? Oh.
Causes, yeah.
You know, Bones read this like 2 months ago, so he teaches Pat. Anyway. Africa and global markets. Sub-Saharan Africa, aka Sub-Sahara Ethiopia. One of the last regions of the world largely untouched by informal imperialism, was also attractive to Europe's ruling elites for economic, political, and social reasons. During the time when Britain's balance of trade... Hold on. Who is it?
I don't know. Just look out the window.
Really? Grand Rising, James.
I'm sorry. We have to hit the emergency brake.
Hit the emergency brake. Hold on. Let me hit the emergency brake for you.
Hold it now.
All right.
Strap down.
I'm sorry. I hadn't had any sleep, so if I'm talking reckless, y'all let me know. Thanks to Brother No Sellout. Had no sleep this weekend. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Just watch the language. I understand. It's a family-friendly show.
Yeah, I don't get down like that.
I know.
You got to go back to something. Go back to the malaria.
Okay.
And what was the cure for malaria?
Quinine. Hold on, let me open it up.
There you go. Now, somebody, for me, anybody, look up quinine.
I'm looking it up.
It's on the screen.
It says quinine is a medication used to treat malaria and babesiosis. This includes the treatment of malaria due to Plasmodium falciparum that is resistant to chlorine when artesunate is not available. Good grief. While used
Chloroquine.
for... Huh?
Chloroquine.
Chloroquine when artesunate is not available. While used for restless leg syndrome, it is not recommended for this purpose due to the risk of side effects. It can be taken by mouth or used intravenously. Malaria resistance to quinine occurs in certain areas of the world. Quinine is also the ingredient in tonic water that gives it its bitter taste. Common side effects include headache, ringing of the ears, trouble seeing, and sweating. Most of its side effects include deafness, low blood platelets, and an irregular heartbeat. Use can make one more prone to sunburn. While it is unclear if use during pregnancy causes harm to the baby, use to treat malaria during pregnancy is still recommended. Quinine is an alkaloid, a naturally occurring chemical compound. How it works as a medicine is not entirely clear. So,
use can make you one more prone to sunburn.
Find where it comes from. Find the main ingredient of quinine.
Cinchona.
And then I'm done.
Cinchona tree. Where's the cinchona tree?
And find where is it?
Click on it. Click on it. Click that you're going too far.
What?
Cinchona. 1820 from the bark of a cinchona.
Right here?
Quinine, first sentence of the second paragraph, sir.
Oh, I can speed you there to let you know. Central America, Jamaica, French Polynesian,
No.
St. Helens,
West
South Atlantic.
West
No,
Africa.
it comes from America.
No, West Coast, son of West Africa.
Sao Tome and Principe.
Wait. Stop the tape. Quinine. Genesis.
Quinine.
Indian. I'm done. I gotta go, y'all. I love y'all. James is out. Doodoo. Cut off. Dropping the deuce. I'm done. Quinine. I'm done. Go back to your regular program. I'm getting off the mic.
Wait a minute. So you telling me that they used a plant from over here to cure some things over there instead of the vice versa?
But what is the side effects? What would be the side effects to a lightly melanated, a non-melanated person from taking this medicine?
You're more prone for sunburn.
More prone to be sunburned.
Wow. So this is a plant that
someone say skin cancer? Son?
Yeah.
I'm burned?
Yep, skin cancer.
Yeah, didn't Ice Cube on the movie? I'm burning up. Yep. Y'all didn't listen to that song, but don't play it in front of the kids. Man, I told you once, I told you twice. Who said that? Huh? When that little Kim, I'm done. Okay, I gotta go. I didn't mean to interrupt y'all. Hadn't had any sleep. Thank you, brother. No sellout. Eject button.
Ain't nobody doing nothing.
First you think the Issa, then he think don't sell out, which is Natchez. Issa Natchez always gets things from doo-doo.
Wasn't penetrating Africa until they got the quinine.
Yep, they couldn't get into the mainland until they got it. They needed that to go inside.
How were you getting millions of slaves, huh? And you had to get the cure over here, huh? What? What's his name? Who was that? Was that Juvenile? What did you say? Huh? What are you talking about? Huh? Everybody, you Indian now, huh? You want to be West African, huh? I'm done. I'm off the mic.
You the one going out there in that sun getting burnt up, huh? You the one that can't get nobody because you need a plan from the Americas, huh?
That's you with the malaria nets, huh?
I'm sorry, Brother Thomas.
Grand Rising, cuz. Hope all is well with you.
Y'all can go back. I'm sorry. I ain't had any sleep. Talking crazy.
You better not go nowhere, huh? You better stay right here, huh? You better not go nowhere, huh? You know, start up some stuff, huh? Don't think you leaving, huh? You better stay right there, huh? I don't care if you go to sleep on the phone, huh? Stay there.
All I know is the quinine. What? The what?
Break it down.
Dealing with the blood, because you're the golden child?
I
Gold is in your
won't
blood?
deny.
Quinine? You can't die. They died from malaria. We wasn't dying. The natural cure was over here in the trees. So when they came over here with that mess, we already knew the cure. That's how they found out and took it over to Africa, huh? What? Huh? What? Oh, man, I gotta go. Y'all go ahead. Continue. Go on. I just put, man, I gotta go.
Please forgive us, it's rising.
We on the show?
Yeah, really? Did he say?
My bad. I almost forgot where we was at.
But no, it's a very interesting point. That's why if you study history, you realize outside of America, these other country stories are not tying into what they try to teach you in school here. That they could not get into the heartland of the so-called Africa until they got this medicine. Yes, the medicine started in the mid 1600s, but you see, they didn't have enough of it until the 1800s. Because they didn't get into the central part of Africa until the 1800s.
Late 1800s, 1881 to be more specific. Not to be confused with the body of water called the Pacific. But anyway, I digress.
Mm-hmm.
So, you want me to read? You want no son out to read? He got about 15 minutes before he can read.
One more thing to think of real quick. Taking this medicine allowed these Europeans to become to be sunburnt. Before the medicine, you couldn't be sunburnt like that, no matter if you was pale skin. But we're gonna break down pale. We're gonna break down pale and dark skin because they taught you in reverse. We're gonna break it down though. Probably not today, but we're gonna get to that.
So, would you do us honors of reading Causes, African and Global Markets?
Yes.
Can you find it?
Well, I was gonna look at the screen, but you clicked on, you put a link in the chat already?
Yeah, I've been put the link in the chat. Do you need to put the link back in the chat?
Oh no, we're on the same one from earlier, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I got that. I thought we were on a different. I got you.
Okay.
I got you.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
I'm ready when you ready.
You said causes, right?
Yes.
No, but that's not in here. We skipped the second paragraph. Are we on? Wait. You didn't post that, Tim. I'm just letting you know.
I'm on. That's Scramble to Africa. My bad.
Yo, I was gonna read it on the screen. See, I told you, I don't be fooling around, y'all. I was genuinely lost. David Corey talking about crickets. Hey, look, yo, I was lost because I was like, wait a minute, causes is not on my screen. I don't see it.
Okay, so where we at?
I don't know what link you're on. Oh, you're on the Scramble. I got you. I'm gonna click Scramble. I got you. Scramble for Africa.
I'm not on Scramble for Africa, but you can read causes for Scramble for Africa. Go ahead.
Okay. Africa and global markets. Cause. Where you at? Hold on, you're gonna confuse the people. All right, there we are. Sub-Saharan Africa, one of the last regions of the world largely untouched by quote-unquote informal imperialism, was also attractive to Europe's ruling elites for economic, political, and social reasons. During a time when Britain's balance of trade showed a great growing deficit, with shrinking and increasingly protectionist continental markets due to the Long Depression, 1873 to 96, Africa offered Britain, Germany, France, and other countries an open market that would garner them a trade surplus, a market that bought more from the colonial power than it sold overall.
So hold on. That's people in the mainland. That's people on this continent that's buying trading goods. Remember, they bought more than what they sent out. Just putting a highlight on that real quick.
DMH?
Yeah.
You good? Okay.
Yeah.
Surplus capital was often more profitably invested overseas surplus capital was often more profitably invested overseas, where cheap materials, limited competition, and abundant raw materials made a greater premium possible. Another inducement for imperialism arose for the demand for raw materials, especially copper, cotton, rubber, palm oil, cocoa, diamonds, tea, and tin, to which European consumers had grown accustomed and upon which European industry had grown dependent. Additionally, Britain wanted the southern and eastern coast of Africa for stopover ports on the route to Asia and its empire in India. However, in Africa, excluding the area which became the Union of South Africa in 1910, the amount of capital investment by the Europeans was relatively small compared to the other continents. Consequently, the companies involved in tropical African commerce were relatively small, apart from Cecil Rhodes De Beers Mining Company. Cecil Rhodes De Beers Mining Company. Rhodes had carved out Rhodesia for himself, Leopold II of Belgium later, and with considerable brutality exploited the Congo Free State. These events might detract from the pro-imperialist arguments of colonial lobbyists such as the Alduscher Verband, Francesco Crispi, and Jules Ferry, who argued that sheltered overseas markets in Africa would solve the problems of low prices and overproduction caused by shrinking continental markets. John A. Hobson argued in Imperialism that this shrinking of continental markets was a key factor of the global quote-unquote new imperialism period. William Easterly, however, disagrees with the link made between capitalism and imperialism, arguing that colonialism is used mostly to promote state-led development rather than corporate development. He has stated that imperialism is not so clearly linked to capitalism and free markets. Historically, there has been a closer link between colonialism/imperialism and state-led approaches to development.
Stop.
I shall.
Very interesting. Break it on that.
Muy importante.
Basically, what you're looking at is this continent is new to them. This is not a continent that they had a lot of control over. This is not a continent that they had been talking about or even importing and exporting. Because even as late as 1870, they only had 10% control of the whole continent. Now let's put this in proper perspective. The continent known as Africa, aka Libya or Ethiopia, is bigger, larger, has a larger landmass in Europe. So they was only in control of 10% up until 1870. So that means that was 90% of the continent they hadn't even touched yet. And the 10% they had control over was on the coast. So this was a new place for them. So again, where did these slaves come from if they hadn't even touched more than 10% of the continent by 1870? Long after slavery was supposed to be over. Because think about this, 1870.
Everybody got their hard hats on?
Go ahead, Bounce.
No, everybody got their hard hats on. I'm gonna drop one on everybody real quick. Everybody remember, when did they set up the Colonization Act for Liberia? When? Isn't it at the top of this same time when they're trying to finally move inland on this continent? Who is they sending inland to help them colonize this place?
Indians.
Look back when they set up Libya. Liberia. Go back and look at the setup of Liberia. Go back and look up the setup of Sierra Leone. Look at when these places are being formed. Look at when these DBAs are popping up. They were using us to colonize the central parts of what they call Africa today.
So I have a question for the scientists. Why is there not any West Africans and Central Africans coming up with American Indian DNA results? I yield the mic.
Mm-hmm.
We still live?
Yeah, we still live. I just pulled up the history of Liberia. So this is how Lectio de Facilio gets blown up on his face and on its own merits. So I'm about
In real time at that.
I'm about to show you the screen. Hold on, give me a second.
You gonna show us the lie of the Iberians?
Mm-hmm.
Liberian?
Yep. The lie to Iberians. Mm-hmm. Hit it right on the head.
Okay, knowing what we know now, based off of history, this story that was just told to us, it says Liberia is a country in West Africa which was founded by former American slaves. American slaves.
Ain't no African slaves set it up. American slaves. Why wouldn't it say descendants of Africans were sent over there to set it up? Huh? If they were African, wouldn't it say that? These people that want to be politically correct at every turn? Come on, man.
And it couldn't have been African.
Every article and every statement and every
They couldn't have been African slaves because at that particular time, one, there was no such name as Africa. Number two, they only maintained control. When I say they, the Europeans only maintained 10% of control of the continent of what was called Africa. Now, Liberia, in Ethiopia then, and they only then maintained the coast. So unless people were just standing on the coast waiting to get captured, they won't bring no millions of slaves over. So we already know that's a lot. Okay, now.
But Root said they were chasing them inland. That's not what Root said.
No, they couldn't chase them inland because they was getting malaria. And they didn't use quinine to get rid of malaria until past 1881, which by that time we was only 4 years. We was only 4 years away from the Emancipation Proclamation being signed in 1865. But anyway, I digress. So, it is one of the only sovereign countries in the world that were founded by former slaves. The others being Haiti and Sierra Leone, established by Great Britain. The immigration of former slaves was funded and organized by the American Colonization Society. The mortality rate of these settlers was the highest in accurately recorded human history. Of the 4,571 immigrants who arrived in Liberia from 1820 to 1843, only 1,819 survived until 1843. Why was that? Malaria, right? Okay.
Yep.
In 1847, the ACS encouraged Liberia to proclaim independence as it no longer wanted to support it. The United States declined to act on requests from the ACS to make Liberia an American colony or to establish a formal protectorate over Liberia, but it did exercise a moral protectorate over Liberia, intervening when European powers threatened it as a territory or sovereignty. Northern state governments continued to provide some donations to the country in the 1850s before the American Civil War. Liberia retained its independence throughout the scramble for Africa. European colony powers during the late 19th century, while remaining in the American sphere of influence, from 1920 the country became independent of exploitation of natural resources. The rubber industry, specifically the Firestone Company, dominated the economy. Until 1980, Liberia was controlled politically by descendants of the liberated African Americans known collectively as Afro-Liberians, who are a small minority of population. Since 1980, the country has been ruled by members of the indigenous peoples who constitute the majority of the population. Years of civil war have devastated the country and its economy. So,
but who was they having a civil war with, though?
They was having a war where they said they were having a war with the people that were indigenous there. So how could there be slaves, African American slaves, who came from Africa if they weren't indigenous? If they were African slaves and they're having a war, if the American slaves are having a war with the indigenous people, wouldn't that be that would be a civil war? Because you having family fighting family, but that's not what they said. They said American slaves were worn with the indigenous people there. So if I thought you were indigenous if your ancestors were from there. No?
And they still fighting to this day.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. Just a thought, though. That's crazy.
Time to build that case, y'all. Somebody need to be on trial.
Yeah.
McGraw Hill now.
Cicero's De Beers Mining Company. So that was
not De Beers the Diamond. Not De Beers the Diamond Company.
Yeah, De Beers the Diamond Company. So
if you put it all in context, the reason why there was a scramble, the real reason for the scramble for Africa is because what was going on in the Americas. Our ancestors uprising, the changing the systems and stuff. That's why they needed another source for resources like that. They couldn't milk it from the Americas anymore. Not how they was doing it prior. There was too many pieces already involved on the land, too many different people, so it was kind of hard to do it that way. So they needed to start over someplace else to get free resources.
Oh boy. Where we at? Give me a second. Right.
My thing is this. If these people came from Africa, why you need to set up an American colony for them to go back?
I don't know. That's a good question. Probably because they're not from Africa. LJ Free said that's probably why they wanted to flee their stomping grounds, Africa, and tell us it's our homeland. They call us African Americans, knowing full and well that's their scorched earth origin. What? Okay, I got you. That's crazy, y'all. What's been sometime long?
Peace to the
Like,
chat.
No selling always say, timelines. They're very critical and important.
Most definitely. Yeah, I was of the impression that a lot of this stuff is just in succession. Is that right? One after the other?
No, but a lot of this happening simultaneously. If you think about it, it has to happen simultaneously, because if you, it's not independent. So.
Oh, it gets better the further we go down. It gets way better.
So I'm going to go back to reading colonial imperialism, the German colony empire. So where are we at? Excuse me. Let's see.
I think we on strategic rivalry next.
Oh, you talking about on the Scramble of Africa? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you want me to keep... Okay, strategic rivalry. All right, let me go ahead and... All right. All right, strategic rivalry. The rivalry between Britain, France, and other Western European powers accounts for a large part of the colonization. While tropical Ethiopia was not a large zone of investment, other overseas regions were. The vast interior between Egypt and the gold and diamond rich southern Ethiopia had strategic value in securing the flow of overseas trade. Britain was under political pressure to secure lucrative markets against encroaching rivals in China and eastern colonies, particularly India, Malaya, Australia, and New Zealand. Thus, it was crucial to secure the key waterway between East and West. The Suez Canal, however, a theory that Britain sought to annex East Africa during the 1880s or outwards out of geostrategic concerns connected to Egypt, especially the Suez Canal, has been challenged by historians such as John Darwin and Jonas F. Gerso. The scramble to Africa territory also reflected concern for the acquisition of military and naval bases for strategic purposes and the exercise of power. The growing navies and the new ships driven by steam power required coaling stations and ports for maintenance. Defense bases were also needed for the protection of sea routes and communication lines, particularly of expansion in vital international waterways such as the Suez Canal. Stop. What does scramble mean? What does it mean when you're scrambling for something? Scrambling
frantically moving.
Because why? Why would you scramble for something? Because you're late.
Competition.
Not only that, but you're late. You're behind the curve. You're not set up. Things need to be done.
Yep.
So, if there were slaves coming from Africa since the 1400s, and we're talking about the 1800s, why would Europe need to be scrambling for Africa? Africa should already be set up based off of American history. What am I missing?
Somebody fibbing.
So this lets you know how much of a lie that was been told. I was looking for a date. Okay. However, the theory that Britain sought to annex East Africa during the 1880 onwards out of geostrategic concerns connected to Egypt. Okay. 1880. So this is the time period we're referring to. We know that they didn't have anything set up. We know that they couldn't have imported any slaves from Africa. You know why?
Couldn't even get into the mainland.
What's one of the first things that the European does when they go to a new land? What did they do when they got to what did they do before they started colonizing the Americas? They had forts built, right?
Yep.
Okay, well, according to this, they had the acquisition of military and naval bases for strategic purposes to exercise of power. There were no military bases there. There were no forts there. So how you gonna be getting slaves and you have no military presence there?
Yep.
You didn't even have control of the waterways. Is that the second thing they do once they get acquisition to a land? Control the waterways? Is that what they did to us? Oh, but none of this stuff is. But this is 1880, and none of this stuff is set up. So how in the world could they have done anything to anybody when they was always on the coast and it was just using it for a trade route? No military, no control of waterways, and you was getting your butt kicked by malaria until the late 1800s when you use guanine, which comes from a plant in South America. So where did these slaves come from? Because basically, according to this history, they didn't have anything set up until well after 1880, which is 15 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was supposedly signed by the United States. Somebody help me understand this. They were scrambling in 1880. Why would you be scrambling if you already had everything set up in the 1500s? Can somebody explain it to me? Am I missing something? Am I overlooking anything? Somebody help me out.
Nothing whatsoever.
Okay. It says colonies were also seen as assets in balance of power. Negotiations useful as items of exchange at times of international bargaining. Colonies with large native populations were also a source of military power. Britain and France used large numbers of British Indians and North African soldiers, respectively, in many of their colonial wars, and would do so again in the coming world wars. In the age of nationalism, there was pressure for a nation to acquire an empire as a status symbol. The idea of greatness became likened with the white man's burden, a sense of duty underlying many nations' strategies. Hold on. You mean to tell me that the only empire that they had ever at this continent up until this time was an Ottoman Empire in the early 700s until like, what, the late 1700s?
Yep.
So there was no other empires in the continent now known as Africa, formerly known as Ethiopia. And we know that because there was pressure. Again, these are my words. And there's sources to support this information. So if you got a problem with it, don't get mad at me.
Proof is not a problem.
There was pressure for a nation to acquire an empire as a status symbol. How are you going to be in Africa since the 1500s and you don't have an empire? You either lying in or you're lying now. Either way, you lying. Stop it. Oh boy, that deserves a segue.
Why you always lying?
So, in the early 1880s, Pierre Sauvignon de Brazza was exploring the Kingdom of Congo for France. At the same time, Henry Morton Stanley explored it on behalf of Leopold II of Belgium, who would have it as his personal Congo Free State. See section below. France occupied Tunisia in May of 1881, which may have convinced Italy to join the German-Austrian dual alliance in 1882, thus forming the Triple Alliance. The same year, Britain occupied Egypt, hitherto autonomous state, owing nominal fealty to the Ottoman Empire. Stop.
Basically, fealty means they owe their alliance to the Ottoman Empire. Even though British went there, their alliance was to the Ottomans.
AKA.
That's basically what it means.
AKA the Iberians, AKA the Spaniards, AKA the Berbers. Turks. Yep. So the only remaining empire that had any influence at this time was still the Ottoman Empire. You got to be kidding me. Come on, man. You can't make this up.
Yeah, Britain was there, but they bowed down to the Ottoman Empire. That's who they answered to.
Come on, man. It said they ruled over Sudan and parts of Chad, Eritrea, and Somalia. In 1884, Germany declared Togoland and Cameroon and Southwest Africa to be under its protection, and France occupied Guinea. French West Africa was founded in 1895, and French Equatorial Canada in 1910. Stop. You gotta love this. So prior to the 1800s, France, England, and Germany had no claims to any area None of the 54 states in the continent of Africa. How do we know this?
Nope.
How do we know this? Because the states are right here. In 1884, Germany declared Togoland and Cameroon and Southwest Africa to be under its protection. It didn't say in addition to any other lands it had already had, because remember, they didn't have an empire. It said there was pressure to develop an empire, which means there wasn't one. Then the French occupied Guinea and French West Africa was founded in 1895, and the French Equatorial Africa in 1910. So here's my question. Can somebody please tell me where all these millions of Africans came from that were shipped to the Americas? Somebody, anybody. Because
They
according
don't even know.
to this right here, this information right here says nothing about there ever being any slaves shipped to the Americas by either Europeans or anybody else. This will make you fall on your sword or your dagger, whichever one you prefer. Germany's Welt politic. It says Germany was barely a colonial power before the new imperialism period, but would eagerly participate in the race, fragmented in various states. Germany was only unified under Prussia's rule after the 1866 Battle of Königgrätz and the 1870 Franco-Prussian War, a rising industrial power close to the heels of Britain. Germany began its world expansion in 1880s after isolating France by the dual alliance with Austria-Hungary and then the 1882 Triple Alliance with Italy. Chancellor Otto von Bismarck proposed the 1884-85 Berlin Conference, which set the rules of effective control of a foreign territory. Weltpolitik, world policy, was the foreign policy adopted by Kaiser Wilhelm II in 1890, with the aim of transforming Germany into a global power through aggressive diplomacy, the acquisition of overseas colonies, and the development of a large navy. So this means they didn't have it yet. It didn't exist before the 1800s. It didn't exist before 1850. It didn't exist before 1859. It didn't exist before 1860. So, where did all these African slaves come from? I'll wait. Okay. Grand Rising Pamela Hall. Moving on. Some Germans claiming themselves of Frederick List advocated expansion in the Philippines and Timor. Others proposed to set themselves up in Formosa, modern Taiwan. Stop.
It's going to get very interesting. Telling on everybody. Ain't snitching, telling.
Again, who named this place the Philippines? Remember, Philippines was named after King Philip. That's not even their original name. And then Taiwan is not the original name. Formosa is what it was called, but we don't know if that was called that by their ancestors. Joe 47 says, I'm looking and looking and looking, and I don't know, TMH. Me either, Joe. I'm just saying, somebody got some explaining to do. Then it goes on to read, at the end of 1870s, these isolated voices began to be relayed by a real imperialist policy backed by mercantilist thesis. In 1881, Hugh Schleinding Oh gosh, that sounds bad. Hubert Slangding, a lawyer, published Deutsches Kolonialreich, according to which the development of national consciousness demanded an independent overseas policy.
Look what they named it.
Pan-Germanism.
Later on becoming Pan-Africanism. Oh, my bad. I fast forward.
Pan-Germanism was thus linked to the young nation's imperialist drives. In the beginning of the 1880s, the Deutsche Kolonialreich was created and gained its own magazine in 1884. The Colonial Stone. This colonial lobby was also relayed by the National Verband. In general, Bismarck was opposed to widespread German colonialism, but he had to resign at the insistence of the new German Emperor Kaiser Wilhelm II on 18th of March, 1890. Wilhelm instead adopted a very aggressive policy of colonization and colonial expansion. Sounds like a power play to me. Germany's expansionism would lead to the Trippitz Plan, implemented by Admiral von Trippitz, who would also champion the various fleet acts starting in 1898, thus engaging in the arms race with Britain. By 1914, they had given Germany the second largest naval force in the world, roughly 3/5 the size of the Royal Navy. According to von Trippitz, this aggressive naval policy was supported by the National Liberal Party rather than by conservatives, implying that imperialism was supported by the rising middle classes. So, just for reference sake, normally whenever you hear someone talk about history and they're talking about a plan, they normally refer to a plan that happened in that continent beforehand. Well, they're not referring to anything that ever happened in Africa beforehand, because nothing had happened in Africa beforehand except for the Ottoman Empire ruling. So they're not even mentioning that. Why? Because that was so many hundreds of years ago. So this plan is a clean slate, a theory of sorts, because they were scrambling to get to Africa and take control. You don't scramble for something if you're already set up and you're entrenched there. Because according to American history, they have been sending slave ships over here since the 1500s. We're close. We're like 5 years out from 1900s, and there is now one mention of there being any slave ships by any Europeans sent to the Americas from this continent. Why not?
And look at it this way. By 1914, Germany had the second largest navy on the planet. This is by 1914, they had the second largest navy. You don't hear about that in history.
So, somebody got some explaining to do. That's why timelines are important. So why is no one talking about the German colonization in this continent? Probably because the timelines don't match up. Now, had this been 1614, that would make sense, right? Had this been 1590, it would have made sense. But that's 1890. And that's 1914. It doesn't match the timelines of there's supposed to have been slave ships coming to the Americas from Africa. Because at that time, one, Africa wasn't Africa. Two, the Europeans only had 10% control of North Africa. the Ottoman Empire. And 3, they needed a vaccine for malaria that they didn't get until 1880. So, by their own words, by their own admission, there were no slave ships that could have ever come here in the numbers that they say at the time that they say, unless they came from North Africa, Algiers and Tangier. Two states out of 54, which will be less than 10% control, might I add. Anyway, moving on. Germany became the 3rd largest colonial power in Africa. Nearly all of its overall empire of 2.6 million square kilometers and 14 million colonial subjects in 1914 was found in its African possessions of Southwest Africa, Togoland, the Cameroons, and Tanganyika.
It's
Tanganyika. Thank you. My bad, Tanganyika. Somebody's gonna send me a nasty email. Following the 1904 entente coloniale between France and the British Empire, Germany tried to isolate France in 1905 with the first Moroccan crisis. This led to the 1905 Algeciras Conference, in which France's influence on Morocco was compensated by the exchange in other territories, and then the Agadir crisis in 1911, along with the 1898 Fashoda incident between France and Britain. This succession of international crises reveals the bitterness of the struggle between the various imperialistic nations, which ultimately led to World War I. Just out of curiosity, I want to see what the Moroccan crisis is. Let me see, because I'm curious. The first Moroccan crisis, also known as Tangier crisis, remember, that's where the Ottoman Empire had the original control, right? Was an international crisis between March 1905 and May 1906 over the status of Morocco. Germany had wanted to challenge France's control over Morocco, but the crisis was resolved by the conference of mostly European countries that affirmed French control. The crisis worsened German relations with both France and the United Kingdom and helped enhance the new Anglo-French entente. Y'all know what I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Do you know what word I'm looking for that I don't see?
African slaves or Slavs?
No. I'm looking for one word that these people were called. I don't see the word more.
No, you won't see it. The people from that landmass that were called Moors are not going to call themselves that. That's a derogatory term.
Nowhere they call themselves Moors. Ooh. I'm just curious. So, my bad.
Yeah, basically all these agreements that you're reading about, they're agreements between France and England, with them working together. That's basically what it's basically like the same type of treaties and deals that they did with our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
French and England signing particular deals so they can get land and this and that from the people.
Yeah. But you know me, I just want to look it up for myself. So, you know, I'm not gonna believe somebody goes, they're the Moroccans, not according to Moroccans. Not again, like I said, there's a Moroccan whose office is right next to mine. He never called himself a Moor. But anyway,
Never will.
Italy's expansion. Italy took possession of parts of Eritrea in 1870 and 1882. In 1889 through 90, it occupied territory of the south side of the Horn of Africa, aka Ethiopia, forming what would become Italian Somaliland. In the disorder
Italian
that
Somalian.
In the disorder that followed in 1889, the death of Emperor Johannes IV, General Oreste Baratieri occupied the highlands along the Eritrean coast, and Italy proclaimed the establishment of a new colony of Eritrea, with capital Asmara in substitution of Miswara. When relations between Italy and Ethiopia deteriorated, the first Italo-Ethiopian War broke out in 1895. Italian troops were defeated as the Ethiopians and had numerical superiority, better than organization, and support from Russia and France. In 1911, it engaged in war with the Ottoman Empire, in which it acquired Tripolitania and Syricia, that together formed what became known as Italian Libya. In 1919, Enrico Corradini, who fully supported the war and later merged his group in the early fascist party, developed a concept of proletarian nationalism, supposed to legitimize Italy's imperialism by a mixture of socialism and nationalism. And he states, "We must start by recognizing the fact that there are proletarian nations as well as proletarian classes. That is to say, there are nations whose living conditions are subject to the way of life of other nations, just as classes are. Once this is realized, nationalism must insist firmly on this truth. Italy is materially and morally a proletarian nation."
Basically justifying why they colonizing.
So, the Second Italo-Abyssinian War, 1935 to 1936, ordered by the fascist Benito Mussolini, would actually be one of the last colonial wars that is intended to colonize a country, as opposed to wars of national liberation, occupying Ethiopia, which had remained the last independent African territory apart from Libya. So, where did these Africans come from again?
But you know they couldn't be there because it's 1936 and they, man, listen.
Can somebody help me out with that? We just read about German colonization, and not only did they talk about German colonization, they talked about France and Britain colonizing. Then they gave you the whole rundown.
Italy.
Right. Yeah, Italy, Portugal.
Ottoman Empire already there.
Right. So they gave you the whole history of this continent's colonization. Not once did they ever mention sending slaves to the Americas. The only historical reference they gave you was the Ottoman Empire. You would have thought they would have had more references, especially with dealing with slavery. And the reason why that's important, because while slavery was going on in the Americas, there were also wars that Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and Portugal were involved in with the United States. So the only reason that they would not have mentioned anything for context is if there was nothing to mention.
Bingo.
Right? Because they brought up the Ottoman Empire.
Ain't nothing to look at.
Why would they bring up the Ottoman Empire? Right. Why would they bring up the Ottoman Empire? Because they had to give you a context from a standpoint of that was the last empire that existed in what is known as Africa. There was no empire other than that, which basically means that the Ottoman Empire was the only empire that ever controlled any part of Africa up until the mid-1880s. So if that was the case, where did the slaves come from? I mean, I don't know. If I'm missing something, please let me know.
Only thing we missing is African Slavs or African slaves on boats by the millions.
James Flames, sir, are we missing something? Is there something that I overlooked? Is there something that's not being stated in this information?
I used to like you guys, but I don't like you guys anymore because you're eliminating everyone from. Oh man, nothing is being missed. Oh man, and you're gonna find out the terminology of what they say Tawny Moors came from, which was the region that you just read about, is Morocco.
Yep.
Those are because it was a derogatory statement. Your Tawny Moor is talking about where you were from, the land in which you were from. It always ties you back to the land. And I'm glad you started going into World War I, how that ended up in Africa. But you see no African countries attacking Europe, so why would the war go down into Africa? It was still about cutting the pieces of the pie.
Yep.
And you remember on the movie Life with Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy, they wanted some pie and they told 35 miles. You got to go down the other way. You want to cut up some pie. That's what it was all about. When they finally got the cure to malaria, but they started burning, then they're like, okay, well, we got to come up with suntan lotion. This is why, again, you will see what they call white people all throughout the Americas prior to that, because they're like, oh, they burn in the sun. No, they weren't burning. It was like either you're going to burn or you're going to die from malaria. Either way, you're going to die. Period. They were not going into Africa. That's why Africa was called the Dark Continent. It was always mysterious. They never went past the coast. If they did go into Congo, it was little spots here, spots there. And someone said, and I can't remember, but it was a little over an hour ago, Angolans are Portuguese, point blank. Point
yep,
blank.
Nowhere around it.
I will give you an example. Look up, they say the first quote unquote slave owner that had slaves for perpetuity was Anthony Johnson. But look up his ship record name when he came over here. He had a Portuguese name. Angolans are Portuguese. Do not let them fool you. They're Portuguese. So anybody that's telling y'all any differently, and you're finding out, again, dealing with Africa was Northwest Africa, well, really all of North Africa, because the Ottoman Empire goes into Egypt as well. And you'll see that whole region. And then look at their languages over there. You will find out in all these languages, like, oh man, I thought it was this and that. You'll find out their second language is French. Why is their second language French? You got to follow the breadcrumbs. Do not let the smooth taste fool you. They are playing mixed match and saying, oh yeah, you know, I don't know, some of you all, I know when we were in school, like for certain day, they're like, oh, it's mismatch day. You can wear stripes and polka dots. Because it was that, and that's what they're trying to do. They are playing the stripes and polka dots game and trying to tell you things that are not true. So again, I ask anyone that is on this kick about, and I'm telling you, let me put it out there before anyone tries to chop and screw what I'm saying. I am not saying that people didn't come from Africa. Blessyourheart.com if your people came from Africa. I am simply saying they did not come by the millions of people that look like us. The ones that came look like them. And you know them better as they gave the label of, oh, I'm Portuguese. You'll start to see that a lot. You'll say, oh, these Africans were coming over, but they were claiming to be Portuguese. Look at these court records. Look at these ship documents. They'll say they're Portuguese. They'll say they're Italians. Remember, there was a great influx of Italians. These are Africans, Afrikaans coming over here. Think about it. Do not let them fool you. I yield the mic. Go ahead, Brother Bones.
I got something I want to add on real quick. You know, a little research project for the relatives, something to think about. If you are directly in the sunlight, you don't need darker skin if you live directly in sunlight to absorb sunlight. You would have lighter skin to reflect the sun because you're directly in the sunlight. You need darker skin because the further you are away from the sun, you need the ability to absorb sunlight. Remember, this whole thing of their skin burning didn't happen until they started taking the medicine for malaria. That's what caused them to burn in that sun. But before this medicine, if you're in these sunny areas, you wouldn't want to have dark skin. It's 2019. People live in the desert. Don't they wear all white to reflect the sun? If you had dark colors on or super dark skin in that sun, you'll burn up in no time. Y'all better check the facts and the science.
What you mean? You talking real science? Not that new math science? Oh,
no, okay, real science. Real science. The closer you are in sunlight, you need lighter colors to reflect it. Directly in sunlight with dark colors is dangerous. It's the further away from sunlight, the darker you would need to be. A la the polar bear, shave his white fur, his skin is black to absorb the sunlight. All animals that's directly in sunlight shave them. They're pale underneath. Why? Direct sunlight. But don't take our word for it. Look it up, research it. While them South Africans are pale skin over there in South Africa, and they doing pretty fine.
Yep, still there. By the millions. Oh, man. It's almost time.
I'm sorry, but not sorry.
Almost time to pull out the real Afrikaans. Let a real Afrikaan tell you. Man, where's Brother No Sell Out? Where's the eject button?
He'll be back shortly. He went to take a station break.
Like I said, that's something to think about. You living directly on the equator in the sun. Why would you need darker skin to absorb it if you're directly in it?
Is it possible, Brother Thomas, if you could find out what year, I know it's couple, what year did the British take over these Dutch colonies in West and South Africa? Because there's still conflict today between the British and those Huguenots that are down there known as Afrikaans.
You said what year did the Dutch take over the British colonies? Colonies of Africa?
What year did the British take over those Dutch colonies in Africa?
Oh, you said what year did the British take over the Dutch colonies? Okay.
And to show you exactly, look at the beaches in America. We ain't out there in the sun by the millions. We complain being on that beach in that direct sunlight. We trying to get to some shade. But who's in that direct sunlight for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours? Come on, y'all. We have to start letting people lead us astray.
Second.
I think David Corey put the date in the chat, 1811.
Okay. Well, follow up to that. Thank you, Brother David Corey. I appreciate you. See, that Texas connection is going on up in here. Now, when did the British abolish slavery?
Um, 1833.
Oh man, wait a minute. Okay, so carry the 4 minus the 8. 1 plus 1 equals 22 years. So how you get the gazillion African slaves that came over here to the Caribbean and Central America, what we know as Mesoamerica, and North America? Because remember, the Dutch, like I say, those Huguenots were running things down there in their pockets. So when the British came and started taking over, and it was a gradual process, because some of them didn't happen until the 1880. That the British actually, when you're going into South Africa. So from 1811 to 1833, you have 22 years. But so-called African slave trade have been going on. So how did the British start dealing with slaves? And where were they getting these quote-unquote slaves from? Because they didn't have a foothold in what we know as Africa until they started following the ways, when they started the battle between the British and the Germans, which leads again into World War I and World War II, and why Adolf Hitler was blitzkrieging all of London. Now you're gonna see what makes sense. The British started taking over the Dutch Empire, their portion of it, and then the Germans clapped back. All this is leading up to all these wars. It's not an accident. So if the British wasn't running things then, again, they were paying a tariff or a tribute to the Ottoman Empire. Again, getting into the Barbary Peace Treaty. So if they're paying a tariff to the Ottoman Empire and they weren't running things in Africa, where were these so-called British getting slaves from, African slaves from? Which is why I say again, this African slave narrative didn't start until the British. It didn't start until then. You will read over and over and over that Europeans were taking Indians into Europe and into Africa. Y'all better think again. Stop letting the smooth taste fool you. So now we've narrowed it down dealing with the British to 22 years. 22 years. I yield the mic.
And like Free put in the chat, that's why a lot of their descendants have to drink milk for the vitamin D. Because remember what the side effects was of the malaria medicine. They couldn't break it down anymore because they couldn't be in the sun anymore because the medicine caused their skin to burn. So they had to get their vitamin D from another source. Remember, The sun activates vitamin D in your body. But now if you can't be in it and you can't absorb it anymore, you need a replacement. Like somebody in trouble.
Somebody got some explaining to do. That's all I got to say about that.
Now, you know y'all done messed up, right? Y'all know y'all done
It's
messed
time
up,
to get
right?
this information together. Somebody going on trial.
For the people that's talking science, now they have just entered my lane. That's why one of my favorite events is a 200-meter run. Because on the intercom, the announcer would always say, watch your lane. Because in the 200-meter run, you have to stay in your lane. Now you are entered into lane 5, my lane, which leads you to Louis Pasteur. And if y'all don't know about Louis Pasteur, then look on your milk carton today. It is what? Pasteurized milk. They needed that milk pasteurized to help them with their vitamin D deficiency in order to travel. I yield this cotton picking mic.
Don't they pasteurize orange juice as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. And why would you need to pasteurize orange juice? Come on, son. Y'all better think again. And then they tell you, oh yeah, well, we're all the same and we do the same things and we need the same things and this and that. And why do you need this and that? And all I know is Indian women don't need milk like that. Matter of fact, the majority of us reject milk. So then we got to go to CVS and Walgreens to get some pills in order to digest the cotton picking milk and not realizing, hey, the milk may be killing you. I yield the mic. I got to go. Man, I'm out of here.
Before the introduction to the malaria medicine, there wasn't pasteurizing milk and juices, y'all. Look it up.
And then like those commercials when they tell you about those pills, side effects can include blindness, nasal bleeding, something else bleeding from other areas that I won't say because it's rated G, and death. And then the attorney comes and says, if you or a loved one, if you died from taking this pill, this vaccine, please call this number. No, dude, I'm dead. I can't call you. He's dead. He's dead. I take that scene out of Mystery Men. No, he's dead. Doesn't matter. He's dead. Okay, I yield the mic. I'm out of here.
Lucy, you got some explaining to do.
And to take a scene out of one of my favorite trilogies, Hangover. Did you die? I got shot. Yeah, you got shot. You got a vaccination. You got a shot. But did you die? I died. And why do you think they were testing us? They wasn't testing those Africans, so-called Africans. They were doing experimentation on us over here, the Indians, and try to figure out what is the deal with this golden blood. They would test things on us to see if it was going to kill us. Tuskegee wasn't that long ago. Don't let the smooth taste fool you. The Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, with the youngsters disappearing, Indian boys and girls that were disappearing in Atlanta, and that's what the Center for Disease Control is. Then all of a sudden they were coming out with this new stuff. They tell you young ladies, and now they telling the young boys, get this HPV vaccination. What? What? Y'all go right ahead. Go right ahead. Keep letting them inject your kids, and that's their way of morphing us all into being. They're talking about hybrids. That's how they're doing it. Because you got to take one thing because it contradicts or cancels this out, but yet they keep testing our blood. Life of the flesh is in the blood. You can splice genes because of what they're doing, but you cannot splice blood. I yield this cotton picking mic.
Remember that.
Thank you for that, James. We appreciate you. Let me go ahead and read a little bit more of this situation with the colonization of Africa. It's interesting, no? See.
Most definitely.
Let's see what we got. Crisis prior to the World War I, or prior to World War I. David Livingstone's explorations, carried on by Henry Morton Stanley, excited imaginations with Stanley's grandiose ideas of colonization. But these found little support owing to the problems and scale of action required, except from Leopold of Belgium, who in 1876 had organized the International African Association, the IFA, the Congo Society. From 1869 to 1874, Stanley was secretly sent by Leopold II to the Congo region, where he made treaties with several African chiefs along the Congo River, and by 1882 had sufficient territory to form the basis of the Congo Free State. Stop. Where do you think they got the idea to have treaties with chiefs from? Huh? Who are the Europeans having treaties with chiefs for before? Oh wait. No one? No one wants to guess? Nobody? Nobody? Okay. By 1882, he had sufficient territory from the basis of the Congo Free State. Leopold II personally owned the colony from 1885 and used it as a source of ivory and rubber. Leopold II personally owned the colony. They was using it for ivory and rubber. While Stanley was exploring the Congo on behalf of Leopold II of Belgium, the Franco-Italian Marine officer Pierre de Brazza traveled into the Western Congo Basin and raised the French flag over the newly found Brazzaville in 1881, thus occupying today's Republic of the Congo. Portugal, which also claimed the area due to old treaties with the native Congo Empire, had a treaty with Britain on 26 February 1884 to block off the Congo Society's access to the Atlantic. So now they're starting to use treaties to control what? The waterways. But wait a minute. I thought the Europeans had been in Africa since the 1500s. Why are they now just establishing control of the waterways? I must be overlooking something. By 1890, the Congo Free State had consolidated its control of its territories between Leopoldville and Stanleyville, and was looking to push south down the Lualaba River from Stanleyville. At the same time, the British South African Company of Cecil Rhodes was exploring north from the Limpopo River, sending the pioneer column, guided by Frederick Sellos through Matabele land and started a colony in Mashonaland. A lot of weird names, or crazy names. Why would Cecil Rhodes of De Beers need to be doing some more exploring unless he was looking for some diamonds? Oh, did I just answer my own question? Never mind. To the west, in the land where their expansions would meet, was Katanga, site of Yiki Kingdom of Misiri. Misiri was the most military powerful ruler in the area and traded large quantities of copper, ivory, and slaves, and rumors of gold reached European ears. The scramble for Katanga was a prime example of the period. Rhodes and the BSAC sent 2 expeditions to Misiri in 1890, led by Alfred Sharp, who was rebuffed, and Joseph Thompson, who failed to reach Katanga. Leopold sent 4 CFS expeditions. First, Le Marinelle expedition. It could only extract a vaguely worded letter. The De la Commune expedition was rebuffed. The well-armed Stairs expedition was given orders to take Katanga with or without Misiri's consent. Misiri refused, was shot, and the expedition cut off his head and stuck it on a pole as a barbaric lesson to the people. Darn. The Bia expedition finished the job of establishing an administration of sorts and the police presence in Katanga. Thus, 500,000 square kilometers of Katanga came into Leopold's possession and brought his African realm up to 2,300,000 square miles, about 75 times larger than Belgium. The Congo Free State imposed such terror regime on the colonized people, including mass killings and forced labor, that Belgium, under pressure from the Congo Reform Association, ended Leopold's rule and annexed it in 1908 as a colony of Belgium known as the Belgium Congo. Sounds like now that they're back to their old tactics and things they were doing when they was colonizing the Americas. But this didn't start until the late 1800s, 1880s. This didn't start in the 1500s. This didn't start in the 1600s. This didn't start in the 1700s. This didn't even start in the 1800s. This started in the late 1800s. So the question is, where did all these slaves from Africa come from?
Oh, they're not talking about them? They haven't talked about them yet?
No, not a one.
All these timelines and
no. The brutality of King Leopold II of Belgium and his former colony of the Congo Free State, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, was well documented. Up to 8 million of the estimated 16 million native inhabitants died before 1885 and 1908. According to the former Irish diplomat Roger Casement, this depopulation had 4 main causes: indiscriminate war, starvation, reduction of births, and disease. Sleeping sickness ravaged the country and must also be taken into account for the dramatic decrease in population. It was been estimated that sleeping sickness and smallpox killed nearly half the population in the area surrounding the lower Congo River. Stop. We see smallpox here in Africa that didn't exist, and then we see smallpox in the Americas where it didn't exist. What's the common denomination to smallpox? Anybody?
Don't do it.
You said don't do it.
Don't do it. You gonna keep ruining careers.
All I'm saying is, smallpox got introduced to the continent of Africa in the early 1900s. 1908. It got introduced in the Americas in the 1500s. What's the common denominator?
Everybody coming from there. Shouldn't it been in the land of Africa first, if you believe their story?
Yeah.
Shouldn't it have been there first, then came here?
Yeah.
How's it gonna be over in Americas, then go to? Come on, man.
It's the same with the Olmec heads. You gotta go somewhere else first and do it there, and then come back home and do it. You know, that's how I wouldn't do it.
So
you saying that Phyllis, first name Cy, put it together, Cy Phyllis, that was in the Americas first, and all of a sudden started spreading into the continent that we know as Africa today. And
Did they use chemical warfare on us first? Wasn't they doing the experiments on our ancestors first?
The golden
we got some
blood.
info on that. Doctors in the 1700s, they did their whole medical practice off of Aboriginal women or American Indian women. The doctor did so many experiments, man, it's sickening. It's the only reason I ain't released it yet.
Yep, all these so-called mental institutions that they were putting our women in to do these experiments on. But I just want to know who's introducing the world to Phyllis. I don't know. Phyllis Diller. Y'all know about Phyllis? Y'all know about Phyllis Diller. I'm telling my age now. Look up Phyllis Diller. Oh, man. I don't mean to ruin it, but you're going to find out Phyllis Diller was passing. I'm sorry, this nice little segue to last night's video. Phyllis Diller was passing. I yield the mic. I got to go. I'm out of here. But I don't want to know who is introducing the world to Phyllis and how was it done? Brother No Sellout, a.k.a. eject button, those timelines. So if they were running things in Africa like that, like Brother Thomas had just mentioned, why are they just now dealing with Phyllis, syphilis, those pox? And we're not talking about two pox. Think about it. Okay, I gotta go.
The Europeans are the common denominator. They the nasties that brought that mess over to us and our ancestors. They the nasties that brought them over there to the continent of Ethiopia, aka Africa. That's the common denominator. If it wasn't there till you got there, then you go somewhere else and it wasn't there till you got there. Obviously, you the carrier. I'm just saying. All right. Estimates of the total death toll vary considerably, as the first census did not take place until 1924. Stop. The first census in Africa under European rule did not take place until when? Hold on. Rewind. Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. 1924 is when the first census in Africa took place under European rule. Can somebody do the math and tell me how many censuses has taken place in the Americas since 1924? First one in 1790, right?
Yep.
That's what I heard.
So there had basically been over 20 censuses that taken place in the United States, in the Americas, since 1790. Africa ain't had but one since 1924. See, that's the type of stuff that people don't catch. You've been in control and been sending slaves over to the Americas since the 1500s, but you ain't taken a census till 1924.
Why you always lying?
And I dropped some in the chat for people to also look up. The cows that they milk and that people eat today, I hate to tell you, relatives, they're man-made. Genetic hybrids.
Man, don't nobody want to hear that bounce. Don't nobody want to hear that. Click that link though.
You said man-made. Ew.
Yeah.
Hey. TMS, when was the last time you had beef?
1990.
All right. Yeah. I just got the VA. That was a long
Because
time
you got to
ago.
realize it's an offshoot of what you know as oxen and all these other buffalo. If you look it up, all those in the category of cows, buffalo, oxen.
All right, so I'm not gonna say it. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it. I'll post that for you that love oxtail. Without that.
Swarth Vader
Like
said
they said,
cows do
think
like
about it.
hippos.
You never seen wild cows. I'll wait. Just roaming out in the woods someplace. Like, hey, cow, come here, moo. You don't see wild chickens like that.
This yard bird tastes like fried toast. Okay.
Free says, if you are what you eat, then beware. Just don't be a cow. Now, I add that last part on. I'm just saying.
What's in your platelet? He said, "Don't do it." What? You eat oxtail, David Corey? I don't want to know how many people in the chat eat oxtail. I mean, I'm gonna post it though, for real. Not in this chat. It's gonna be on the forum.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out because if Africa had been sending slaves over here, then they would have had a census to know how many people were there, how many people were left, and how many people they sent. But anyway, it is difficult to quantify the population loss of the period. Casement's report set it at 3 million. William Rubinstein wrote, more basically, it appears almost certain that the population figures given by Hochschild are inaccurate. There is, of course, no way of ascertaining the population of the Congo before the 20th century, and the estimates, with like 20 million, are purely guesses. Most of the interior of the Congo was literally unexplored, if not inaccessible. See Congo Free State for further details, excluding numbers of victims. Or including numbers of victims, excuse me. Then it reads, a similar situation occurred in the neighboring French Congo. Most of the resources extraction was run by concession companies, whose brutal methods, along with the introduction of diseases, I'm gonna say it again, whose brutal methods, along with introduction of diseases. So who introduced the diseases? Resulted in the loss of up to 50% of the indigenous population. The French government appointed a commissioner headed by de Brazard in 1905 to investigate the rumored abuse in the colony. However, de Brazard died on the return trip, and his serially critical report was neither acted upon nor released to the public. In 1920s, about 20,000 forced laborers died building a railroad through the French territory. 20,000 people is a lot of people that died on a railroad. Suez Canal. French diplomat Ferdinand de Lesseps had obtained many concessions from Ismail Pasha and Khedive of Egypt and Sudan in 1854 through 56 to build the Suez Canal. Some sources estimate the workforce at 30,000, but others estimate that 120,000 workers died over the 10 years of construction due to malnutrition, fatigue, and disease, especially cholera. Shortly before its completion in 1869, Khedive Ismail borrowed numerous sums from British and French bankers at high rates of interest, putting them in debt. Y'all see it? British and French bankers. Okay, it says by 1875 he was facing financial difficulties and was forced to sell his block of shares in the Suez Canal. The shares were snapped up by Britain under its Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli, who sought to give his country practical control in the management of this strategic waterway. When Ismail repudiated Egypt's foreign debt in 1879, Britain and France seized joint financial control over the country, forcing the Egyptian rule to abdicate. Quick question. Where else has this happened? Will the banks assume control of a project that ends up giving the state that the banks or the country that the banks belong to financial control of the company, putting the country in debt? Where else has that happened? South America, perhaps? So if they doing something that happened in South America before they did it in Africa, that means they occupied South America before they occupied Africa, right? Or else we would have known about this earlier, wouldn't we? Huh?
Isn't there a canal in South America that they use?
Yeah.
Anybody know the name of that canal, perhaps?
The Panama Canal?
Oh, that'd be it. Shout out to Van Halen. Panama! So y'all know about that, huh? Look it up. Van Halen. Panama.
So, according to American history, the oldest continent got visited last and is being colonized last, and did not send millions of its inhabitants over to the quote-unquote new land. Somebody lying.
I'm trying to follow you this morning, but TMH, you're telling me that people came over here to the Americas to tell people in the Americas that they were from a land that the colonizers knew nothing about, and the Indians over here knew nothing about, and the Africans have no oral tradition or songs of lamentation about millions of people being taken away from there. Is that what you're telling me? I'm just trying to follow. I'm just following the breadcrumbs.
That's not what I'm telling you. That's what their history or their story is telling you. Let's see. Let's look for the sources.
They do have a song. Take me to another place. Take me to another land.
There are references that number
Tennessee.
There are 61 references. James. There are 61 references that support this document. So I'm not telling you anything.
Wait, is that regular 61 or is it the new math with an F? New math. New math.
Starting from the number 1 all the way to the number 61 and the other 58 numbers in between. Or 60 numbers in between. And there's also further reading that you can do. That has another 20 books that you can read. And then there are external links. So, yeah.
And I'm looking at all these places, and one of those references I saw was from Oxford, home of the Cecil Rhodes Scholars. So all these Rhodes Scholars have this information and are not giving it to the public. They're telling you you're from Africa. Man. I'm just trying to figure it out. You know, then Oxford gives way to Harvard and Brown and Yale and all these places that every time I keep looking up African American studies, it's a European teaching the class. Harambe! Okay,
yo. Harambe. Oh, man. That is Hollywood. That is.
I'm just trying to figure out what's really going on, and even how in Africa they're renaming these places that you find out over here. Because when you look at where they talk about Leopold and getting the ivory and the rubber, right? And that place was today called Shaba. Again, that Shaba brings you back over here to the Zapata, the priests that were the rubber shoe makers, your Sabbath. I'm just trying to figure out if they had recently named that place Shaba, and I'm still talking about this lost tribe of Shabbat. I'm just trying to follow the breadcrumb. But like I said, I hadn't had any sleep. Thanks to Bud No Sellout, I've been sleep deprived. So maybe I'm just in this haze, you know, like when you see everything and everything is like foggy around you except certain things. So I'm just trying to figure it out. So if they're going over there and they're doing the same things that they've done over here, all these treaties with these chiefs, man, that sounds so familiar. Then they turn around, they deal with these waterways and bankrupting these established governments, and then they turn around and they give you quote unquote infrastructure. I'm just trying to figure this out here, and I'm scratching my head on this because I really want to know. So you telling me 61 references these were I saw some Arab references, and I saw some Deutsch references, and I saw British references, I saw French references. So you're telling me 61 different references, and I am still trying to find these African slave ships. Help me. I yield the mic.
Bruh, I wish I could help you. All I know is that there are 61 references that this information was pulled from, which anybody can go pull up and go get access to. Their ISBN numbers, their reference books, their stuff that you can go online to get. You can actually go to the actual country's archives and pull this information up. So, I mean, I didn't write this stuff. I'm just reading it. You know, I'm only doing a halfway decent job as long as the words resemble English. So I can't give you no more information than what I can read and what I can see. That's all I got for you, bro. I'm sorry. Can't do no better than that.
You mean you can't give me one shackle? Not one, like, can you give me a shackle or two that's like saying that this was or give me a plank, and I want to rebuild these African slave ship cargo vessels. Or can we get a chain? It's one chain. I'm not even asking for 2 chains. I'm asking for 1 chain. Can we get 1 link that says somebody was shipping all of these Africans by the millions? And you read earlier, you said, what? It was only 10%? 10%? Any of y'all know about dealing with the church? That's a tithe. We just need 10% for the building fund. And you never see a brand new doorknob. Can we get 1 shiny new knob for the building fund with your tithe?
This illustration is from 1984. What happened? No update? Okay. We're just gonna go with this.
Hold on.
And they've been built.
So basically, what we could do is we could actually go to Legoland and have them construct a slave ship based off of what has been told. That's what we could do. I mean, I'm surprised they don't have a slave ship by Lego. Personally.
They got Noah's Ark.
Yeah, I mean, they got Noah's Ark.
They got Noah's Ark.
I'm just wondering.
You know what? You just got me on a field trip. There's a Legoland right down the street from me in Grapevine, by the airport, by DFW Airport. That's a field trip. I'm going to ask them to let us reconstruct in the parking lot a Lego slave ship.
Let's do it.
Where's the blueprints from these ships from the people that built them?
It's the same story as the blueprints to get to the moon, bones. They destroyed them, and they can't get that technology back. Sorry.
I mean, who paid for all the ships to get built? Ain't nobody building ships just to be building ships.
Oh yeah, it was under the table, so those documents were destroyed. No tax papers, no invoices.
See, that's not a true and accurate statement, because even work that the United States did underground with other countries is still archived, because they'd have to have some type of record. That's called double books. Even when you have double books, you still have to have a record. So that don't work. People that don't know business don't know nothing about that. So when they say there was no records, so even if you did have it to where you had double records, there would still have to be records from the sender and the receiver to make sure that that cargo got there. And that would have to be archived for future references, because these old families would have filed lawsuits claiming that they never got their cargo, and then that country would have owed the United States money for cargo not yet received. Go look at some case law. See, so that don't fly either. But because people don't know business, they don't know nothing about that either. So I relinquish the mic.
To the liars, I tried to help y'all out. It didn't work.
I mean, think about it. These people keep every artifact and relic of everything they did in their history. They brag about it. You trying to tell me you'll make a fictional movie called Roots to brainwash you, but you ain't keep no couple of 100 slave ships around to remind you of your position if you're supposed to be this inferior set of people? Come on, man. Where's the ships made that's half the size of a cruise ship today that you would need to carry these people? Where's the records of ports that would have to stop off to keep getting supplies, not just for the cargo that you carrying, but for the crew?
Now we done put this nonsense to bed. Let's go ahead and Oak Cliff says made by Mattel. Made by Mattel. Joe Forcell says, what you talking about, Willis? How about we do this? It's my Friday. We had great information with lots of sources attached to it. 61 sources that suggest that state as actual fact that there was no kingdom established in the continent of what was now called Africa until the 1880s. And before that, the last empire that was established in Africa was in the 700s under the Ottoman Empire, when it was only established in 2 states out of Africa. Out of 54. Out of 54, there was only 2, Algiers and Tangier. So that means the other 52 had nothing to do with the Europeans. And the only reason they were able to get into the continent called Africa in the 1880s was because of a vaccine that allowed them to fight malaria. But it had a side effect that stripped them of their ability to absorb the sun, which means they had to pasteurize milk and drank the milk to get vitamin D because they couldn't absorb the sun without being burned. These are historical facts, ladies and gentlemen. So here's my question. Where are the slave ships that brought all these millions of people from Africa to the Americas, when out of its own mouth, according to the Portuguese, the French, the Dutch, the Germans, the Belgians, and 61 documents that support this, that there was no colonization of Africa until 1880, which means that's 15 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. Lucy, you got some explaining to do. So let's go ahead and let all these great people get on with their day and continue to be productive citizens and help their community. Is there anything anybody want to say before we do that? Is there anything anybody want to say before we do that?
Research.
Okay.
I just still keep going back to this malaria thing. I just can't shake this malaria thing. Then it was just mentioned about that great movie that changed all of our lives in the late 1970s of Roots. But I'm trying to figure out, I can't see the chat. Is Lady Free still in the chat? I hope she is.
Lady Free is still in the chat, yes.
Because I'm just trying to figure out why the main character of that lie called The Roots is named after something that I'm not going to talk about, but it goes back to that same plant that was the cure for malaria, aka bad air. Mal in French means bad. If you say ça va, which means like what's up, how are you, and they say ça va très mal, that means they're really bad. Bad air. Mal means bad. Malaria area is air. Bad air gets back to that same plant that was the cure, and what they call the people kunta, kunanin, the dance of the 5, and you will understand what 5 means at a later date. But it gets back again to the motherland, which is here, the land of Maya, the land of Mama. No matter what is going on, you can talk about me all day long, but when you talk about my mama, it's over. So you better think again. They trying to get you to call Africa the motherland. They keep trying to get you to say you came from there. They keep trying to say that you were the original man from there, which means you are you were kissing on monkeys, and they came later on to rescue you. I'm going to end on this note. I'm going to ask you a question. Where are all the major roadways and infrastructure? Because I heard that on another YouTube channel. They were talking about, no, they don't even know what infrastructure means. Where are the roadways? Where are the waterways? Where are the aqueducts? Where was all of that in West Africa? The last time I checked, they were still sticking sticks in the sand, drawing up football plays. So I know about the Natchez Road that they still use today in the Americas. I know about the levees before the Army Corps engineers that the Natchez built down in New Orleans, because New Orleans was a port before the Europeans knew about it being a port. I know about all the great edifices. I know about all the great roadways and the waterways and the tunnels. And y'all thought that El Chapo had something going on. He just took a page out of the She People's book, out of the Uli. So I'm still trying to figure out where all this infrastructure that was going on in West Africa and why they have bad water and bad air for these Europeans. So how did they get in there? Again, go back and you better study Kunta Kinte, but don't click on that wrong button because you're going to get pop-ups and viruses. So you better have the Geek Squad on standby if you click the wrong link. But it's going to lead you to what I've been telling you for the longest. Don't let them fool you, and don't let these Angolans try to tell you, oh, I'm African. Yeah, you came by way of Africa, but you Portuguese. Anthony Johnson, I know who you are. I yield this cotton picking, Kunta Kinte-ish, non-African slave ship-ish, can't find 2 chains, can't find any evidence. I'm still trying to find who were these Moors because they hadn't been mentioned. I'm still looking at why these people speak French, why they speak Dutch. I'm trying to find out why Zulu is a Dutch language. I'm off this cotton picking mic.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hurt him, Hammer. Don't hurt him.
Too late. Everybody in the chat is under concussion protocol right now. Just stay where you at. Be ready to come around and take a look at you. So you done? You done for the day?
Oh, I'm sorry. And I just want to know. I'm going to channel Alex Haley, and I'm going to ask him why was it so imperative that he kept saying his name was Kunta Kinte? Maybe because he was trying to tell you that he's from the Andes, that he was from South America. He was trying to tell, oh, your name is Tolby. No, it's Kunta Kinte. I'm from Argentina. I'm Indios. I'm Indian. I'm Auntie. Oh no, the name is Tolby. Look at that clip again. He's trying to tell you where he's from. Not no cotton picking Africa. So when you're rocking kente cloth, you look at that kente cloth and then look at the cloth that they wear in Argentina, Venezuela, and Brazil, all along the Andes. That's not West African cloth. I'm sorry, I gotta go. Kente cloth is I'm telling you, it's from the Kunta people. Find out who the Kunta people are. And I gotta go. But I said I was gone, but Thomas said, Thomas, I can't help myself because I'm sleep drunk. Thank you, brother. No sellout. I gotta go. I'm out of here. I may be back again. So just mute me. Mute myself. I mute myself.
Oh, that does sound like sleep deprivation. Yeah, that's amazing.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Man,
So you know what? I'm gonna be cordial, and I'm gonna go first, because I don't want you to have to follow that. No, so I'm gonna go.
Oh.
And he'll go, and then he'll go after you, and then Bones will go. Okay. I wanna say, greetings, peace, grand rising. Hope everyone of the new subscribers had the opportunity to listen and understand a little bit more about who we are and what we do, and that that we're about genealogy and helping people find their home, find out who their people are, so they can know where to start after that. If you need any help with that, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. To the Autochthonous Assembly, silent majority, aka A2 Samaj. We appreciate y'all. Y'all the numbers that allow us to do what we do. Because without y'all, we'd be talking to ourselves. So we appreciate you. Shout out to the livest, smartest, bestest chat on earth. Appreciate y'all for keeping us on our toes and making sure we do what we're supposed to do. Much respect. To the panel, you already know. Y'all make what I do so much easier. So I thank y'all, appreciate y'all, respect y'all. A2, same deal, and unchanged. So with that, I'll relinquish the mic to No Sellout, and you can go from there.
All right. Appreciate you, TMH. Appreciate your Bones. James, I apologize if I caused any heartache and pains for having no sleep, but you was on fire today anyway, so you're welcome. The chat, appreciate everybody for coming out today, like y'all always do. Hit us up if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and or corrections. Still waiting on those corrections. These timelines is whooping up on some folks. But yeah, hit us up if you got anything to say outside of the show. Peace, y'all. Peace free.
All right.
See you in the chat, James.
First of all, I'd like to thank the panel, TMH, No Sellout, Brother James, for what they do. Secondly, would like to thank the chat, the ones that's active every day and the ones that just listen and taking in the information, because without y'all, none of this would be possible. On that note, we must remember, we all have to always question who told us and why we was told certain things. We have to question why people expect us to take what they say as word without checking for ourselves. When history teaches us, that never worked for us. So we must make sure that what we do is find who we are. Stop letting people tell you where you came from, especially if you have no records to tie you back there. And realize there's a reason why they lumped everybody in two categories. It's the only way to cause the confusion on what we in now today. So on that note, everybody do some time out on your genealogy. Take the time out to help someone else with their genealogy. Have a very, very blissful day. And until the next Rising Show, everyone, peace.
Okay, I'm back, y'all. Don't end it.
Yeah.
If y'all didn't know, look up Vicuña. Look up that wool. Look up that llama. When you look it up in the Andes, that's where you get the Kunta Kinte cloth. Okay, I gotta go. I really am. I'm unplugging myself from the whole internet. I'm unplugging myself from the whole internet. I gotta go. I gotta go.
It's coming
out.
out.
But look at them llamas and them coats, them sheep.
You know what? Bones, you gonna edit this.
What?
Bones, you gonna edit this.
Yeah.
Bones gonna edit the end of that.
Nope.
All right, so that's good, y'all. We're gonna end it. Y'all have a great rising. We look forward to talking to y'all mañana in the next rising. So,
I say again, peace.
Hold on, beloved. Hold on. Peace, y'all.
Warning, hats, pickaxe, shovels, boots, wire.